Hey everyone, welcome back to C for Fun. Today we're diving straight into coding, exploring how to print triangle patterns in C programming. Let's get started and see how we can create these patterns using simple loops and logic. So we're going to begin with simple shapes to complex shapes. Here we have the right angle triangle and the horizontally flipped right angle triangle. So in this first example, we're going to be using the right angle triangle. We have I, which controls the rows, and j, which controls the number of stars. When I is 1, the number of stars is 1. When I is 2, the number of stars are 2, and so on and so forth. We see that j, which is the number of stars, functions according to the number of rows, which is I. So we're going to use a loop which is going to be printing number of stars according to the number of rows. This will be easier if we are going to use a loop which will be printing our rows, which we are going to use a variable I, and we'll use another loop which will be printing our number of stars according to I, which will use a variable j. So for us to do this, we are going to set an initial size for the triangle, which is n. N is going to be the size of a triangle because it presents a number of rows. Of course, the number of stars depend on I, which also depends on N. Now let's go to the flipped right angle triangle. Here is a little different from the previous triangle because the leading spaces in green decrease. Here we have leading spaces which decrease. The number of stars j still depends on the number of rows, so everything still applies, but we're going to be using a new loop to bring the spaces. If you observe closely, we're going to see that the number of spaces, these leading spaces, correspond to a formula n minus I. For example, when I is 1, we have the number of spaces to be equals to n minus I, which is 5 minus 1. So we have 4 spaces. When I is 2, we have 5 minus 2, we have 3 spaces, and so forth, and so on and so forth. Note that when you want to print patterns or shapes in C, you need to look for always to get the formula that corresponds to the shape. In this case, we have the n minus I formula, which is going to really help us in the leading spaces. So now let's get to coding. So guys, here we are. We're going to begin straight away with the first triangle. So what we need is we need two loops and some variables. So we're going to use the variable I, which will be printing the rows, and j, which will be printing our number of stars. So going straight to the first loop I, which is printing the number of rows. So I'm going to use a for loop in this case. So we're going to use for I equals to 1, that is the beginning, and I less than equals to n, which we are going to set just in a moment. I should be increasing. So what we're going to do is we're going to put every other thing inside I, because I is like the loop that prints the rows, the loop that determines how the other loops function. So now we're going to use n, and you can write code that can make the user to enter his desired size. For this example, we're going to be using 5 as a size. So we're going to use n equals to 5. And then inside this loop, we want to print like a next line. And then we're going to use our next loop, which will be printing the number of stars. So we'll use for j equals to 1. So long as j is less than equals to I, since j functions with I, we're going to also be incrementing j. Here we're going to print, I would like, let's use a particular character. In this case, we're going to use a star to be printing this. So after doing this, we can just simply run our code and we get our output. So let's run this and see. Compiling. So what we see here is we have an error. Let's try to look, see where, oh, this is the error. J less than equals to I, so yeah, that should work. So yeah, that's our triangle, clean and nice. Without wasting any more time, let's go to the next triangle, guys. So here, there's just a little difference. So what I want to do is, I just want to like make some space between the first and the second triangle. I'm going to print some spaces here like that. And then for the next triangle, it's going to be simply basically the same thing. So I'll just copy this and paste down here. Now let's place the differences. So here we need a variable called space, which we're going to use to print spaces. So we said this space moves according to our formula n minus I, as we explained. So what we're going to do is we're going to print this space just before we print the stars, since the spaces are the leading spaces. That's the reason. So here we're going to have for space equals to n minus I, our formula. So long as space is now greater than 1, greater than equals to 1, since space is decrementing, right? Space should decrement. So the reason why we're putting greater than 1 is since it's decrementing, once it decrements less than equals to 1, it stops. Here we're going to be printing our space. Yeah. After doing this, we can just run this code. Compiling. Let's check for errors, guys. Okay, no. Then let's run this. So here we have our first triangle and our second triangle. This space is due to the print the slash n that we initially placed just to differentiate the triangles. Oh, sorry if I said circles, it's actually triangles. So that's it, guys. That's it. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share so that others can benefit from this. If there's any issue, anything you want me to correct, anything you want me to explain, please write down there in the comments waiting for you. Thank you.